Yo, what's up guys? Josh, Magikarp Poker here, back with another video. So, if you guys tuned into the last video, I got absolutely crushed at the win. Shouldn't have played that session because I had just came off an 8-hour session at Resorts World and my brain was just so tired. So I'm actually back at Resorts World again. I slept for a few hours and then I had to check out of my Airbnb, and there's still a few hours I need to kill before I can go to the next place I'm staying at, my friend's house. So just gonna hit the 1-3 streets of Resorts World. I think for me, it's a little frustrating because I know I can play good poker, but sometimes I just don't have the discipline. It really just comes down to discipline, just because I feel like in the 1-3 streets, the most profitable style is really just like tight aggressive and betting when you have it and not really trying to like bluff or, get in there with super marginal hands. So I feel like with poker, it's just a game where, everyone's always trying to play better. There's so much information out there, constant improvement from the whole player pool, that you just have to keep on grinding and improving to beat the game. So even though, I was running hot earlier, I can't let myself get overconfident, right? Because that's what's been happening these last few sessions, especially this week. Started drinking, started thinking I can play like 12-hour sessions, and then all that shit just went downhill. So gonna return back to the basics, and I think for me, just practice discipline and learn to walk away whether I'm up or down when I start playing bad, because I think that's something I could have done yesterday better, and I didn't. So the important thing here is just to learn from each session. That's why I love just like getting out there, playing the game, and trying to get data points, for you guys for the content, but also for me just to continue evolving from, a Magikarp to a Gyarados. So with that being said, let's head on in to Resorts World. So the first notable hand of the session, I play heads up against someone who actually recognized me from Coach Aero's channel. He was like, "Oh, I think I saw you on YouTube." And I was like, "Oh shit," getting recognized, because this session was actually when I just started making YouTube videos. It was probably just a few weeks into my grinders journey, so pretty cool to, meet someone that watches Coach Aero's channel. Anyways, in this hand, the under the gun limps, so does the low jack. I'm in the small blind and look down at pocket king, so I bump it up to $16. The guy who recognized me from Coach Aero's channel to my left, he makes the call, and the two limpers get out of the way. Flop comes 4-3 Jack Rainbow, which is a pretty dry flop, good for my hand. So I go ahead and continuation bet for $15, and the big blind makes the call. The turn comes a 2 of diamonds, now bring in a flush draw, and also making any naked ace have a gut shot. So I go ahead and size up to $50, which is around 80% of the pot. One of Coach Aero's piece of advice for me was, when I have a made hand and I'm betting for value, just size up, 80 to 100% of the pot. So that's what I do here. And the big blind makes the call. The river is now 6 of diamonds, now bringing in the flush draw, as well as making any 5 a straight. So I actually go ahead and do a blocker bet of $60. And the big blind thinks about it, and he actually bumps it up to 150. I think, what could he have? But ultimately, I felt like it wouldn't make sense for him to just randomly have a flush draw here, and the only 5 he could ever have is a pocket 5s or maybe suited connector. But I've actually played this guy before and he's on the tighter side, so I go ahead and just make the call, and he says we're good. All right, so around an hour later, the next notable hand happens. So we have another limp pot, under the gun, hijack, and cutoff all limp. The small blind gets out of the way, and I look down at 4-3 offsuit, and I go ahead and check my option. Flop comes 2-3-3, so we flop trips. I go ahead and check, and the action checks around. The reason I check here is I just wanted to disguise my hand, and I was actually just planning on check raising. But I think in a limp pot, I would have liked myself just to lead out here to start trying to build the pot. So when the turn comes at 2 of diamonds, we now improve to a full house. I go ahead and start building the pot and bet $10. Under the gun folds, the hijack calls, the cutoff now raises to $20, and I actually re-raise to $40, just trying to keep him in the hand. The hijack folds and the cutoff calls. So 2 ways to the river, which is a 5 of spades, which is not really changing anything. If anything, it makes ace for a straight, but we're not too worried about that with a full house. So we go ahead and bet $60 for value, and the cutoff folds. So I think in general with like limp pots or straddle pots, it's okay to just bet out of position and not wait for someone else to take the betting lead, unless you know that there's like an aggressive opponent who's also sticky where you can get the check raise in. But I feel like in the 1-3 streets, for the most part, the majority of people play pretty face up. You only really need to do deceptive plays against better opponents, or if you move up in stakes, which, clearly we haven't really played much 2-5 or higher yet. So a lot of the strategy I talk about is more related to 1-3. All right, so in the last notable hand of this session, which wasn't too interesting of a session, it was honestly pretty straightforward.
We have 2 limpers to us when we look down at king 9 suited in the low jack. So I go ahead and raise to $16. The hijack and cutoff both call. Both blinds in the limper get out of the way, and the second limper comes along. Flop comes queen 9 king with the club draw on board. So when the action checks to us, we go ahead and bet $40, which is a little under 2/3 size pot bet, just to start building the pot. As we flop pretty strong, we have 2 pair. However, the hijack and cutoff both call, and the under the gun +1 who checked originally gets out of the way. The turn is a jack of diamonds, which is a terrible card for us since now any 10 makes a straight, and this board is just like way too connected. We even lose the king jack now. So we go ahead and check, not looking to put any more money in this pot. The hijack now bets $60. The cutoff raises to $200, and we have a pretty easy fold here. We actually think about it for a bit, but then we're not really beating anything, so we get out of the way, and the hijack also folds. So we never get to see what the cutoff has, but this is a good example of why king 9 suited is actually a tricky hand to play. There's a reason a lot of people just don't play this hand, is because if you make 2 pairs such as I did, it can oftentimes be dominated. If you hit the king, you have a kicker problem. If you hit the 9, you might have a kicker problem if you run into ace 9. So in general, I feel like king 9 suited, you're really looking to hit a straight or a flush, but you still need to proceed with caution, especially with a straight, since let's say the flop comes queen jack 10, you're getting dominated by ace king, and it could be, you know, a straight over straight situation. So in general, I feel like these hands are fine to play depending on the table dynamic. You know the saying where if the table's playing tight, you can loosen up, and if the table's playing looser, you want to tighten up. So I feel like king 9 suited is a good hand to add into your range if you're playing at a very nitty table. But one word of caution is it's best to only do this in position, like later positions, and be aware of like any better hands, since you can easily get dominated and value on yourself. So after this hand, I wanted to lock up my profits. You know, I feel like whenever I get up early in the session, I just play like way more scared and just want to secure the bag, right? Secure the win. So we quickly rack up after this, since we felt the table dynamics was getting very actiony and we wanted to just leave on a win. And that's going to do it for this session.
We are back, boys and girls, or probably just boys. We're back. So just grinded a quick session at Resorts World, played around 2 hours, and at my peak I was up like $400, but then lost a few hands at the end and ended up profiting $297, which is actually a huge win for such a short amount of time. I was just playing tight, playing right, playing aggressive, how I should play, and then yeah, I'm pretty happy with how I played, even though I lost 100 at the end. It's always good just to book a win, and I think for me, I tend to go up early in the session and just leaving when I'm up, right? I feel like, you know, in any sort of like game where, you know, there's luck involved, you're gonna have upswings and downswings. So I think timing the exit is a skill in itself. And you know, the table got a little worse after a few people left, so I just figured like, okay, I'll just play a few more hands, and then if I lose them, then I'll just leave and, you know, book the W. Well, another thing that helped too is gonna go meet up with Coach Aero at the Win. I want to just talk to him about mindset and some of the leaks I had this week, and just get his perspective, just because, you know, oftentimes in a journey such as the grinder journey where there's so much uncertainty, it's good to hear someone who's made it, right? Give you feedback and advice, and you know, instill confidence, or hopefully keep you in check, right? So that's the goal right now. Gonna go head over to the Win and meet with Coach Aero.
All right, so we just finished shadowing Coach Aero. We watched him for around 30 or 45 minutes, and it's always cool to see an actual pro play poker. I feel like the few times I've shadowed him, it has just been really helpful to watch me see how like someone who does this for a living, you know, approaches the game. He's nice enough to explain his thought process too when he's not in a hand. So that's always really cool, and super grateful for the opportunity. It's pretty interesting because I will say that like anyone who's a winning player or pro, for the most part, doesn't play many hands. Like, one trap I fall into is I really like watching the live streams such as Hustler Casino Live and a lot of those games with a lot of action. However, you got to remember that if you're playing for a living, there's no reason to be super splashy and make crazy lines, since, you know, there's no stream going on. You're playing against a different player pool for the most part. So in general, I feel like with lower stakes live cash games, you don't really need to worry too much about balancing your play, at least like pre-flop. And in general, I think it's easy to see these fancy plays online and, you know, develop fancy play syndrome where you want to outplay your opponent. But the truth is, a lot of the money you make in poker, from what I've realized, is you just bet when you have a good hand, fold when you have a bad hand, And that's pretty much it. I think for me, I used to be like way too loose and aggressive in getting my money in whenever I had the opportunity, at best hoping for a coin flip. So I think just playing like tighter and more value heavy has been a really big adjustment for me, which helped me go from a 27% win rate to winning over half my sessions now. So after I shadowed Coach Aero, I really wanted to play. I'm always wanting to play, right? He always like roasts me saying like, I can watch him longer. But after watching him for 45 minutes, I'm eager to get back out there. So I go ahead and sit down at a 1-3 game. Shortly after I sat down at the table, Coach Aero walks over and says, "This guy's a 2-5 pro, so is this guy. I don't even know what they're doing here. And this other guy is a solid regular." So he basically said there's 2-2-5 pros at my 1-3 table and told me to get a table change immediately. So that's what I did. And I don't have any interesting hands except for this one because first off, there's nothing of note, right? Like for this vlog, I don't need to show like the boring hands. I want to make sure that every hand I show has some value for you guys. But this was the most notable hand so far. So basically, at this point in the session, we're down like $100 or $200 from our buy-in. And then this hand happened. So there's a straddle under the gun. The small blind calls. I look down at 6-7 suited in the big blind and I make the call. The under the gun, who seemed like a pretty aggressive player, he raised to $26. The small blind folds and I go ahead and make a call here, which is a pretty loose call, but I feel like suit connectors are like my kryptonite. I fucking love playing them. It's like such a toxic relationship. But anyways, the flop comes 3-9-8 with 1 diamond. So we flop an open ender as well as a backdoor flush draw. I go ahead and check, not looking to put any money in right now. The under the gun bets $15 and I actually bump it up to $30 just because I have a semi-bluff hand where I could improve to a nutted hand. However, to my surprise, the under the gun now raises to $120, and I think for $90 more and almost 100 big blinds behind, I go ahead and make the call. So the turn comes a 7 of hearts, improving our hand to second lowest pair. So I go ahead and check. The under the gun now bets $200, and I just go ahead and jam for $250, and the under the gun makes the call. The river comes a miracle 7 of clubs, so we river trips. We table our hand, he shows pocket kings, so we absolutely sucked out on him, and we take this one down. I texted Coach Aero about this hand, and he said that this is an absolute donkey play, terrible play, and I just got super lucky. And he actually thought that the other person played it right with the re-raise to my $30 raise on the flop. So he actually was impressed with the other person's play, but we had some run good in this hand, obviously. We were way behind, and we caught up. So, knowing that he had pocket kings, we were basically drawing to 8 outs for the open ender, as well as another 4 outs for trips. So 12 outs, which is around 23 or 24%. And yeah, we were in bad shape, but we get lucky and book a W. It's pretty interesting because I feel like, I was talking to a subscriber, Anthony, shout out if you're watching this. He's from Washington State. He actually used to play as a poker pro full time, but now he's gotten a sales job, and he was actually talking about how, in poker, there's so much variance. Like, what if someone just runs bad for their entire life, right? Since theoretically, the way you level out variance is by getting more hours in. But what if someone doesn't have enough time, to play, or they just don't hit that critical threshold and they just run bad? And I think that's a pretty interesting point, just because even in this grinder journey so far, up until this point, I've had really good luck. In a lot of spots, I'm honestly just getting super lucky. And I'm not even trying to avoid that. I don't think I'm crushing the game at my current win rate, but with run good, I'm actually winning. However, I will say I'm not attributing it all to luck because for the most part, aside from the hands I get super lucky on, I am playing a lot more solid and tight than I did before. I feel like now I'm able to fold Jack 10 offsuit, right? Instead of getting the urge to play it. Or I don't limp in as much and I just play stronger hands and raise or play raise pots basically. So although variance is definitely a thing, I do think that poker is a skill game where if you're running well, you can maximize your variance, and if you're running poorly, you can minimize the downswing. So yeah, that's just my 2 cents on the variance topic and luck. I want to give a disclaimer that Coach Aero, called me a donkey and does not endorse this play, but this was definitely how I used to play, where I would love getting the money in with these type of draws, and yeah, panned out well in this hand, but we'll have to see if the run good continues in the future.
All right, just finished my session at the win. Booked the win at the win. You guys know I love saying that.
Stop it. Get some help.
But yeah, honestly got pretty lucky with my donkey play with the 6-7 suited, which got there on the river. But yeah, talked to Aero about it. He said I should have just flat called and got there cheap and then, you know, check shoved the river. Yeah, super happy with how this session went overall. Even besides that hand, I felt like I was just playing much tighter and playing my game for the most part. And yeah, booked 2 solid wins a day. The first one at Resorts World for almost $300, and then the second one here for like $274. So I think, yeah, I'll pop the numbers. I think the first one was for $297 and the second one was for $274 for a total profit of what is that, like $297 plus $274, $571. So $571. You know, we're not out of the hole yet for the losses from this week, but I think for me, I'm just trying to focus on grinding out, you know, consistent wins, really just focusing on playing well each time I hit the felt. And yeah, guys, like, this crazy fucking journey, so much poker, but you know, I love it. I love playing, I love filming, I love creating content, and just super grateful I'm able to get coached by one of the best 2-5 crushers in Vegas. This is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for me where I have a gap before my work and I'm able to play a lot. So just trying to make the most of the situation, you know, get as many hands in as possible and become a profitable poker player.